Hey, and welcome to the Grow Like a Mother podcast. I am your host, Jill Wright. I am a time management strategist, author, speaker, and obviously podcaster. I'm so happy to have you here with us today. If it's your first time, welcome to the Grow Like a Mother family. This podcast is all about helping busy moms prioritize themselves and helping them achieve their goals and work in all of the things that they want in their lives, in addition to being an amazing mom and having the family life that they dream of. So, on that note, today we are talking with returning guest Brittney Ashley. We are talking about self-care and boundaries. Brittney is a proud Métis mom, a passionate entrepreneur, business coach, and an imposter syndrome expert. We talked about imposter syndrome the first time she was here. As a founder of Creative Dynamics, she's dedicated to helping moms thrive in their careers while balancing their family life, which is what this podcast is literally all about. It's a perfect fit. I love her unique approach to coaching with her focus on personal growth and authenticity. She really empowers individuals to overcome their self doubt and break free from their limiting beliefs. So I'm really excited to have another conversation today with Brittney Ashley. And I want to refer you back to an episode I did with Valerie Recor on the fair play method of parenting. We talk a lot about how to master the mental load of motherhood in the episode that we did in the fall of September 2024. And we talk in that episode a lot, again, about boundaries and why it is important to sort of reduce the mental load of motherhood, regain control of our time so that we can show up in the way that we want, take time for ourselves to recharge through the self-care. We do it by setting boundaries. It all intertwines. I will, of course, put the link for Valerie's episode in the show notes as well. But in the meantime, I can't wait for you to get reintroduced to Brittney. All right. Hey, Brittney, welcome back to the Grow Like a Mother podcast.
I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you back. We always have such awesome conversations, and you're a real expert in this arena. So I'm happy to have you sharing your wisdom with the audience. They of course know who you are because hopefully they've already gone back and listened to the first episode we did together last year or maybe the year before, where we talked more about imposter syndrome. But I want to kind of like elaborate on that today and weave in the idea of how like self-care and boundaries it all contributes
Mhm.
to the feelings of mom guilt and imposter syndrome that we have. And I guess with that in mind, where do we begin to chat about this?
Hmm. Well, I know you have a range of listeners. So there's entrepreneurs and there's some that could be 9 to 5. And really, at the end of the day, it's going to show up for anybody with mom guilt or imposter syndrome. It doesn't matter what level you're showing up as a mom, it'll show up no matter what on some kind of feeling like when you're wanting to do the self-care, that guilt will come up for you in many different ways. And the one thing that I've been like a big advocate on is trying to give ourselves grace. And that's something I'm still working on. I'm not saying I perfected it. There's so many people out there like, oh, there's Brittney doing like 600 million things. No, that's my ADHD because I can't control it. But how am I molding the self-care into the chaos, I guess, because
Mm,
it is sometimes chaos. I have a 6-year-old. I don't know if I mentioned that in the last show, but I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. And I built my business with my daughter, who was 8 months at the time. And so, really, at the end of the day, to make it point blank, it was just always chaos. And it still is chaos. I would say when they're babies, I was actually having this thought process the other day. When they were babies, it was so much easier. This age is so much harder. And so, what does self-care, boundaries, and everything like that look like? I'm still figuring it out by any means. If anyone's like, "Oh, Brittany has it down. She's got it." No. True. Authentic me telling you no, I'm probably still figuring it out like the rest of us. Um, but I'm being mindful of weekend times. Instead of taking calls. So I've had this particular past client would message me on like a Sunday being like, "Can we get on a call right now?" And I'm like, old Brittany would be like, "Yes, let's do it." And I'm like, I'm practicing the no and putting
mm,
those boundaries in there because I'm being I'm trying to be very mindful where my energy is going. And if they can't meet me during the week, especially when I said I can make movements in my calendar, because I do understand that they have 9 to 5s, if they can't work with me, then I'm like, I'm sorry, I just can't do it. So I'm being mindful of how my energy is being put out there. And I'm very nice. I'm very like, let's work together, let's collaborate, all these things. But if I can't see that reciprocated, then I know that I just can't push my own boundaries. And then weekends for me are self-care.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's essential too because I mean, you've got not only your radio show, but you run a business, Creative Dynamics, right? It's a VA staffing business. So you are busy. You have a lot of things going on in your professional life as well as with two little ones at home. Like it's a busy age for them. They want you. They want to be interacting with you. You can't kind of like put them in the swing and go to work. And then when they cry, give them the bottle and come back to work, right? You're in this new phase of it. And I love that you're trying to keep weekends sacred and creating the boundary of like an actual work week, which at least the entrepreneurs that I work with in the time management realm, that's where they struggle the most. Like you
Yeah.
don't have set hours, you make them. And so where do they end?
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I feel like that also applies a lot to people who work from home.
100%. To say the least, like sometimes, yes, you might see me working like maybe 2 hours on the weekend, but I'm very mindful when I put those 2 hours in. If it's like breakfast time, TV time, those are usually the times of like when they wake up. So if we're up at 7 a.m., it's usually between 7 and 9. I'm like, I will just get through some extra emails that I didn't get to that last week or whichever. And really, at the end of the day, I have 5 to 4 hours. And like you mentioned, I have a radio show, which does take a lot of my Mondays. So to put my time and effort within creative dynamics, and I also have a team and being mindful where that energy is going too, I really only have Tuesday to Friday between 4 or 5 hours. And I feel it's like an ongoing joke because I'm like, I'm not ready outsource yet my own assistant, but I work with everybody else on how to get an assistant and how to like scale up. Um, I know I'm almost there. But because I'm this year, by the way, I'm practicing what I preach more, and I'm also becoming my own best version of my own client. So whatever I give my best clients, my 200%, I'm like, how can I give my 200% to me, Creative Dynamics, and to my business coaching and the radio to show up happy in that energy?
I love that idea. I love, love, love that idea. And just making yourself your own best client and following your own advice and sort of walking the walk that you're talking.
Yeah.
Um, it's
Yeah.
hard to do. So, like, what does it look like for you? You've told us about setting those time boundaries in terms of weekends are for home, or you're very specific about where you spend your work time on a weekend. What other kind of boundaries do you have in place?
I actually just had this conversation with one of my other clients. We did a live and we were talking about time management. And it's, as somebody who has ADHD, I couldn't fit into the mold that my old coach was like, you need to wake up at 5 a.m. and you need, I'm like, no, I like my sleep. Thank you very much. I'm like a night owl. So if I have to work in the nights, I'd rather do it that way, and map out times that way. But what I do maybe like on a Sunday is look what my week's like and really map in. I like to write things down. And so write out what are my top priorities that week and then kind of mold it down that way and make sure I have it in my calendar on lunches or drinking water. I don't know if anybody else is listening who has ADHD, but I tend to forget drinking water or even moving. And so this year I'm trying to be a little bit more remember to show up and move your legs at lunchtime than just sitting at the table. Like I'm my own boss, no one can tell me what to do. So why not go for a walk with my dog or mold that a little bit more better in my schedule? And some days it doesn't work out, but I'm trying to give myself grace on, okay, why didn't it work out? What can you do differently next week?
Yeah. You're gonna love my planner. Oh my God, I can't wait to
Mm.
share it with you. It's like almost in the ready stages, but it's got all of these same components, right? It's like you prioritize your week. You take a look at it, you build in the pieces that are important to you, and you can track those habits like drinking water that you want to do. Like all of these are so key. We're so aligned in so many ways. I love that. I want to know more about what type of self-care you're putting in. I hear you saying, nourishing your body with the water it needs and going for the walks when you need to. What other kind of things? to you is self-care?
For me is being with friends. Like that gives me so much joy. I find, especially when you have two little ones, it's just kind of like you forget how to talk to people. It's like, oh yeah, like I actually like seriously, Peppa Pig right in front of me. So I'm like, oh. So having those little moments of like going for coffee or even for lunch kind of mold those in. So like yesterday, actually, I met one of my clients for lunch and we end up going from 12 to 2. And normally I'd be like super anxious, super like I need to get home and do X, Y, and Z. But you know what? I was like, nope. This is my time. This is like my extra self-care that I need to feel that will make me more in alignment. And as you know, I really love to give back to community. And the other thing for me, some people might think this is weird, but to me, I love to volunteer a lot. So I'm actually on the board of directors at the West Shore Chamber. And like that gives me so much joy to know that I'm showing up too. To me, that's self-care because that I get to learn a little bit more about the economy and all these other things that maybe I won't be able to learn behind the scenes with the kids. So to me, that's self-care. So anybody listening, self-care is going to look completely different to the next person, next mom. So sitting down and kind of mapping out what brings you joy and what brings you like I can't meditate. I tried. I just did a course called Trauma with Money and one of the and I will practice more. I think it's just I'm so used of always being on autopilot. But one of the lessons was thinking of how to quiet the nervous system and take better breaths and meditate. And so I could, and I had to write a paper. I was like, I didn't get to the 30 minutes or whatever you wanted, but I did do 5 minutes a day. That is
Sometimes that's
progress.
all you can do, right?
Exactly. So I feel like let's push against what others suggest or maybe what others may think might be the best for you. At the end of the day, you know what's best for yourself.
Yeah. You have to personalize it based on what feels good for you
Mhm.
and based on what feels good for you today, which could be different than yesterday or tomorrow because of the things you've got going on, right? And um, I love that you still did the meditation for 5 minutes
Mhm.
in like it wasn't a fail just because you didn't get to 30 minutes. It doesn't have to be all or nothing with self-care. All of the little bits count, all of the little bits that feel good to you. And I had a guest on recently. I don't know if this will have aired before or after that episode, but um, she mentioned that self-care doesn't have to be done like alone. So when you say going
Mhm.
out with friends and volunteering, like yeah, you don't have to be alone to do self-care. It can be things that look like work, like spending that extra time at lunch with your client. That can fill two buckets. There's no reason why it can't.
100%. I love that. Um, we call each other sisters. Was just a really good friend of mine. We were trying to map out just kind of workout schedules. So that's our self-care together because we're both kind of struggling right now. So we're like kind of like, let's do gym buddies and try to like break ourselves out of the mold because sometimes when you're in that rut, it's hard to do it yourself. And so it's okay to ask for help. I was just having this big conversation just on finances. We did a live and we were just talking about you need to find the person that also wants to help you too. And when you're asking for help and you feel like you're getting that pushback, they're just not meant for that for you. Like it's okay to then go to the next friend or the next whichever. Navigating somebody that actually truly wants to be alongside with you when you're doing the self-care, or if you want to do it yourself, um, just knowing that you have the right to kind of lead that.
It's a great point because not every person is going to be the right fit for what we need them to be or what we want them to be at every given time, right? You might have that friend you always go to for a laugh, but if she's having a bad day, then she's not going to be the person who makes you laugh today because of something she's got going on, not because of you, right?
100%.
Um, so understanding that again, we need this wide network of support and connection and community to be able to support ourselves through these moments where we're trying to give ourselves grace, we're trying to do the right thing. We're trying to build in boundaries and self-care and tackle the guilt and all of these things, all these shoulds, right, that we feel are important, and they are important, but we can't do them alone. And I think something that you have mentioned throughout this talk so far is this idea of giving ourselves grace when
Mhm.
we're practicing.
100%. And it's hard for moms. I get it. Mom guilt does creep in so much, and imposter syndrome, feeling like you're not competent enough. Just finding those little moments when you do get those thoughts in your brain, start asking yourself, become more curious and start asking yourself, why? Why is this coming up for me? If you can nail down the why, then you can start breaking down in modular pieces on how to, like, you can't fully overcome it. Like, I think things are always going to come up for you, like imposter syndrome. You can definitely quiet it, but it's always going to be there sometimes when you go up to speak to like a senior executive or whichever, like this person doesn't want to hear from me. But if you learn how to quiet the noise, you can move so much more into the direction that you really want to be in alignment with. As a lot of people have been reading like the Mel Robinson book, the Let Them. Like I have a tattoo that says Let Them. I have not read the book, by the way. I resonated so much with just a little bit of what they said. And my notion this year too is the energy piece, like I mentioned before. So I actually had a friend that had a housewarming, and there was another person that we've known each other, but we're not no longer friends. And I was like, you know what? I don't need to go. And they're like, but I really want you there. And I was like, meh, I'm good. My energy, I'd rather just be than, you know what? I don't want to be in that energy. That to me also bringing into the self-care because I do love doing my friend groups. But that energy to me is more precious at home and having my own glass of wine and watching uh, Love is Blind or whichever.
Yeah. Yeah. We get to make these decisions for ourselves, but we need to understand our own energy levels. We need to understand our own preferences and our own needs and what truly makes us feel replenished and nourished and filled up. Because if we don't know that about ourselves, if we're not curious and if we're not paying attention as we try different things, we're never going to figure it out. So we won't have the confidence to make these decisions on yes, I'll go or no, I won't. Right. And
Mhm.
I think that that just brings me to another point that I wanted to mention or explore with you is the idea of having imposter syndrome when it comes to boundaries. Oh, I'm not good enough at boundaries. Oh, I suck at self-care, right? Like we can have imposter syndrome about these very things. It doesn't have to be imposter syndrome in our career or about our parenting or whatever, right?
I feel like you need to figure out what boundaries maybe that you're breaking consistently. So for me, I'm a people pleaser. So I say yes a lot. And so I started to realize that I would like work on weekends when I didn't want to. I would do all these extra things. I'd go above and beyond, and I felt unappreciated. And so I was like, you know what? Why is it so hard for me to say no? Like, why can't I say no? And so I kind of started practicing a little bit, just writing down like no, or in my brain, no, I don't want to do this because X, Y, and Z, or no, it's not in alignment to my values. Like when you're doing, when you're working with business and building a business, you're going to collaborate with people that you're not in alignment with, and you might try to push yourself out of the comfort zone and all these other things, but learning why certain things come up for you in certain ways and understanding that you can't people please all the time or what is moving your boundaries. I think it will kind of move mountains once you understand why you're doing this certain thing to break that boundary.
Hmm. Yeah, and really tying it back to your values, which you have to know and explore and really be certain on and
Yeah.
clear on, right? Before, because if something isn't in alignment with your values, you might feel that sense of unease, sort of distrust, stress, whatever these things overwhelm, some sort of butting of heads, right? We can feel those things, and if we're not clear about our own values, we don't understand them. We don't know why they're there. And so it's
Mhm.
not easy for us to make a decision like, okay, this is a client I can't work with. This is a friend I can't be friends with anymore, right? Like I need a boundary here.
Mhm.
If we're not aware of the underlying values. I think that's a
Uh,
really good point.
mhm. I feel like I feel like the older I'm getting, I'm like, I've really nailed down my values, which really helped me lay down my boundaries. So like the last 2 years have been such a transformational journey for myself. For the radio show, like I just opened up more authentically raw, talked about things that I normally wouldn't talk about. And then like when I went through trauma with money, I had to dig into a lot of my trauma that I didn't even know was trauma because I fawned it all. Like I put it, fawning's just kind of, you know it's there, but you don't want to acknowledge it, but you're just going to put it underneath the rug. I'm a fawner.
Same.
I don't like controversy. I don't like any of the things. But what I do know is that I like to advocate for things that are wrong. So I need to kind of break through the trauma so I know how I can set up and advocate for things that I really am passionate about. And so going back to boundaries, sit down and map out maybe trends that maybe you're seeing in your life, business, and see how you're kind of breaking those boundaries that make you feel uneasy and ask yourself the why, the simple why question, like why are you doing it?
Mhm. Yeah. It's a simple but powerful place to start. And that's exactly what people need when we're giving these tips of like and tools. They need a simple and powerful place to start that's gonna give them some clarity.
Mhm.
And I'm curious to know, as you were talking about being a people pleaser and using this practicing of saying no, whether it's in your head or out loud, do you ever use affirmations to help you? Is that a tool that is helpful for you?
Yes, actually, this year I've started putting down, I attract magnetic clients because it was like the last few years, I feel like, why? Like I want everyone to be so successful and all these things. I really truly do. But it's been a hard journey and we have so many amazing clients and I was like, I want more of these clients. And so this year I've just been saying that and so far it's just been kind of like an just been rolling on in. So I've been loving it and I love to do like business coaching and strategy more. And so thinking of how I can do those kind of different affirmations and how I can show up too has kind of rolled into, I would say, really the last 2 years. It wasn't something that I've always done. Maybe when I did the imposter syndrome program, I
Mm,
started thinking, yeah, thinking more about it. It was more of when I did them. My years are all combined, let's be honest. Like, I don't even know what year we're
same, same.
survival mode. Um, but yeah, when I did the imposter syndrome coaching program, we did a lot of affirmations. So that was kind of like I think the ignition. And then I've just learned how to kind of stack more onto it to into my personal and business life.
You know what I'm finding with a lot of my colleagues and friends who are building businesses who like you and I have been connected for a number of years. Like as we move through, I am seeing us all
Mhm.
figuring it out, all of the pieces coming in. Like this feels like a year where things are moving in the right direction, which feels really great. So I'm super glad to hear that that's the case for you too, where things are you're attracting the clients you want and the numbers you want, and being able to step into more of the business coaching that you love and really just streamlining things in a way that feels really good.
I'm I don't know if you believe this, but seeing numbers, like consistent numbers. So lately I've been seeing like 1 1 1 1 1s, like 11 11s, which is absolutely bananas. Like I was driving and the car kilometers was like 1 1 1, and I swear it stood there so I can take a picture of it because it like no one's gonna believe me.
Yep. For me, and I talk about this a lot. So if anyone's listening to the podcast and they have listened for a while, you'll know this about me. Since I was 15 years old, I've seen the time 11:26 on the clock every day.
What does that mean?
And like as I've started realizing, well, I mean, I started realizing pretty young that this was the thing that I was noticing, but then I realized like this is sort of my cue from the universe that things are on track, right? My sort of little reminder, like, yep, or a poke to sort of like, hey, pay attention to something.
Yeah.
Um, and it's amazing how when I focus on it, I start to see, and now 126 is coming up a lot. It'll be, like you said, in the car or on a receipt or on a bill or when the kids put the little numbers and letters on the refrigerator, it's wild where it comes. So it's super cool to know that that happens to you too.
Yeah, it was, and I never look at my kilometers because who needs to do that?
Yeah.
I just like looked down and I was like, this is weird. And I took a picture.
Oh, that's cool. I love it. I love it.
I love it.
Um, Well, this has been such a wonderful conversation. Thank you for sharing with us your experiences with self-care and boundaries and how you navigate that as a entrepreneur and a mom and a busy person. And I'm curious to know before we say goodbye to all of our listeners today, is there any piece of advice that you feel called to share or anything you want to leave them with today?
I think it's like what I've been saying the whole kind of conversation is give yourself grace. It doesn't matter if you're a mom or not. I feel like we're pretty hard on ourselves, and social media, the media, world issues, unfortunately, we are all in a nutshell hard on ourselves and each other sometimes. And so maybe give yourself grace, the other person grace, because you just don't know what somebody's going through.
Mhm. Yeah, wonderful advice. Thank you, Brittany. And thank you again so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.